computer. So there's still people trying to get in, but I'd like to welcome you all to our FHT Norwich group and to thank Helen for coming here tonight and giving you a talk on being a resilient therapist, which is very timely, as I was saying. So I'd like to leave you in Helen's capable hands, and I'm going to turn my video off, but I'll be watching the people in the waiting room and keep an eye on for that for the next 10 minutes or so, and then I'll be gone. I'll see you about 10 to. Okay,
cool.
Thank you.
Jolly good. Right, let me share my screen. So in theory, you should now be looking at a screen that says resilience, why we need it now more than ever on the left-hand side. Now on the right-hand side, there's like a tree. Does that look right to people? If you see that, give us a thumbs up. Great, lovely. Okay, as we go along, if you want to type anything in, please do feel free to type into the chat box. I will just try and bring the chat box up and put it somewhere I can see it. And yeah, and if you can pop yourselves on mute, that would be brilliant, because that just helps the recording not picking up any background noise. But if you do want to ask a question, pop it into the chat box, or just put a big Q in the chat box and say, I've got a question, and then I'll pause and you can unmute and ask. So without further ado, let me crack on. So everything today that is in this presentation, please take and use for your own use in any way, shape or form that helps you. As with all things, a good healthy dose of common sense applied to your own situation is always really, really helpful. So let me tell you a little bit about me. So I started my career back in the 1980s, which seems like forever ago now, and I trained as a nurse in the Queen Alexandra's Royal Army Nursing Corps. So this here little picture over here, I'm just trying to find who's, there we go, not muted, there we go. Right, so yeah, so I did my nurse training here in the army. Loved being in the forces. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and then when I left, I've been very lucky that nursing has given me the opportunity to work in lots and lots of different areas, everything from occupational health to cancer nursing to children's nursing to all manner of different areas. My journey with holistic therapists and reflexology started in 2004 when I was working, when I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, and my consultant at the time said to me that stress was what was exacerbating my symptoms. And he suggested to me that I needed to reduce my stress, which is all well and good, except for the fact that at the time I was running the UK division of a medical software company, which as a nurse had taken me well out of my comfort zone. What we did was we provided clinical decision support software to help doctors and nurses when they were doing clinical assessments, either over the phone, like when you phone your GP and they triage you, or when you phone NHS 111 or NHS Direct, as it used to be. And we wrote all the software that underpinned all those systems and taught doctors and nurses how to use them. And it had taken me well out my comfort zone, obviously put my stress levels through the roof. These three little people over here, well, they were all still in primary school, and my ex-husband was, and I was bringing them up by myself, my ex-husband was an alcoholic. So when my consultant said to me, you need to reduce your stress, I genuinely had no idea where to start, because it seemed to me at that moment in time, there was none of these things that could be reduced in any way, shape or form. But a friend of a friend suggested that complementary therapies would be a good idea, and in particular reflexology, and suggested that I give it a whirl. So I found a local reflexologist, poured floods of tears when I spoke to her, bless her, about how I needed reflexology, and I was really stressed, but I wasn't really that stressed, but I obviously was stressed, and how I couldn't see where I could fit it in. And bless her, she did the best thing ever. She very simply said to me, okay, take a deep breath, always a good idea when you've got somebody stressed and upset on the phone. And then she said, what are you doing on Saturday morning? And I said, I've got the ballet run first thing, and then after that we're all back and it's fine. She's like, right, I will come to your house and we will sit the kids in front of the telly with a snack, and we will do as much reflexology as we can. If we get 10 minutes done, that will be great for you. If we get 20 minutes done, that will be even better. And if the children give us enough peace to let us have the whole session, brilliant. And it changed my life, because not only did it help me with my PCOS, but it also helped me decide that once I had the company that I was running at the time was in the process of being sold, and once it had finished being sold, I decided that that was it. I was going to become a reflexologist, and that started my journey with reflexology. And as I'm sure you can imagine, I very quickly attracted a client base who also were very stressed. Energy begets energy, doesn't it? And built up a practice around women for whom stress had impacted on their health. And I decided after a while to add some coaching into my toolkits. So I trained to become a coach, a neuro-linguistic programming coach in particular, and added some other energy modalities in as well: thought field therapy, reflective repatterning, and some trauma release work as well that I'd come across. That led me to write this book here, Bounce Back Ability, Developing Resilience on the Roller Coaster of Life. Sadly, that's out of print at the moment because my publisher retired and I never quite got round to self-publishing it by myself. But if anybody does want a copy, I have got a PDF of it. So what are we going to cover today? Now you know a little bit about me. Oh, and that's my dog, because my dog's just as important as my kids. and the reason that up's there is because that little bit in a national newspaper about women and their dogs bought me an article in a local, led me to getting several articles in several local newspapers, and bought me a good half a dozen clients. So that's there to say that that old adage that any publicity is good publicity. If you've got a business, then, and you get an opportunity to talk about anything, do, because if they'll let you pitch your business, then you can find yourself new clients. Oh, somebody is not muted. Let me mute them there. There we go. Who else is not muted? That's better. There we go. So today, what we're going to do, we're going to have a look at resilience, why it's important now, what the benefits are, and give you some tips to help you cope in this COVID era that we're living in. And then I'm going to introduce you to my bounce model of resilience and share with you how I support holistic therapists and reflexologists in particular, but I'm not limited to reflexologists. It's just that I didn't go on and train in lots of other therapies. I've just literally got reflexology and Indian head, but I don't do very much Indian head massage. Most of my clients is all reflexology or coaching. So we are all in the same rough sea with COVID-19, but we are not all sailing in the same boat, because for some people, depending on who you are, what your personality is, what your belief system is, how COVID has impacted you, it will have impacted us all very, very differently. This can be because of our belief system, because of where we're living. It could be because we're very introverted, and actually the lockdowns haven't affected us too much from an introversion perspective. But if we're an extrovert, then we get a lot of our energy from connecting with others, then it can have been a very difficult time. It can also be related to our own past medical history. And it's worth noting that 1 in 6 people will naturally experience mental health problems. And that pre-pandemic, the Health Foundation had already, their research had already shown that mental health disorders around anxiety, depression, etc., account for nearly a quarter, that's a quarter, of the total burden of ill health. And yet they don't get a quarter of the notice, and they certainly don't get a quarter of the budget. We already have quite a lot of evidence that mental health has been very adversely affected by this pandemic. And ongoing research is being conducted by a number of organisations, including the Nuffield Foundation in particular. Last year, at the end of the first lockdown, there had been an increase in alcohol-related deaths by 16.4% compared to the same time period in 2019. And that was after just the first lockdown. So what it's like now, heaven only knows. We do know that there's also been increase in domestic abuse. That has got some attention in the press and the mainstream media, but there's lots of other hidden effects of the pandemic that we're becoming more and more aware of. The social isolation, the loneliness, the job and financial losses. Anxiety is very prevalent, because if we're constantly being bombarded by this message that this is dangerous, that it's and we've got all these fear messages, then our amygdala becomes hyper aware of this, and we will therefore also see more anxiety and more fear inducing things out there. So try not to watch the news too much is my advice to all my clients. Only put it on once a day. Don't buy newspapers, and be very careful where you get your information from. We also have suffered from something called surge capacity. Now, surge capacity is your ability, a human's ability to garner resources to help them overcome super stressful situations. So that, like, lots and lots of adaptive things that you can pull together to get you through. And we often see this in major disasters, where people have overcome, huge adversity, and they, battle through. So hurricanes and things like that. Not that we get very many of them in England, and we do get the odd tornado, don't we? But flooding's a big problem for us, isn't it? And so surge capacity is kind of like where you draw on those resources and it gets you through. The challenge with this last year is we've drawn on those resources, it's got us through, but it hasn't ended. And so our surge capacity becomes depleted. We've also suffered from something called ambiguous loss, which is a loss that's unclear and lacks resolution. Okay, so again, for us, this has been the loss of our way of life, the loss of family and friends being close by, the loss of normality and what that means to us. So everybody has suffered, but everybody has suffered in a very unique way for them. And obviously, as holistic therapists, when we have those people in our treatment rooms for whatever treatment it is that we're giving them, then the effects of the last year, as we get our hands back on them next week, will start to come pouring out. And we as therapists need to be prepared for that, and to understand that each person is going to have their own story to tell. And even our quietest of clients who normally come in and just, you know, don't say very much, but just really enjoy their treatment, may need to offload. And therefore, if they're offloading verbally to us, and that's absolutely fine, we need to be able to make sure that we're fully grounded before we treat them, and that we ground ourselves again afterwards, so that we manage that energy. The other thing as well I would say is about long COVID. I have no doubt that we will all be seeing plenty of people with long COVID in the coming months. I certainly know that in the autumn of last year, in the few months that we were allowed to treat, I saw several long COVID clients. My tip with long COVID is, remember, it affects everybody very differently, depending on where the virus got its biggest grip. But the most important thing is to what your client tells you is the thing that bothers them most. So they may say that they are struggling with fatigue. They may say that they are getting frequent headaches. They may say that they're getting palpitations, or that their digestive system still hasn't settled down, or that they are feeling like they have got a lot of brain fog, or that they're fine one day and then the next day they can barely concentrate on anything. And so therefore, when you are talking to them, focus, and you're treating them, focus on what's important to them. Giving a really holistic treatment is going to be the key to supporting people with long COVID. And the other thing with long COVID I would point out is that there are two very different types of long COVID out there, in terms of, there are the people who were hospitalized and then ventilated in hospital, and there are those who were hospitalized but not ventilated. And then there are those, so those come under the hospital version. And then there are those people for who had COVID and never needed admitting to hospital, but for whom were still really, really poorly. The people who were ventilated, the thing about long COVID is the thing about COVID is that those who were ventilated for a lot longer than is normal. So most people, when they, and I put my nurse hat on here, most people when they go into intensive care are usually on a ventilator for maybe 48 hours, 72 hours, maybe a week or 2 weeks is a long time on a ventilator. Most COVID patients were on ventilators for 6 to 8 weeks, and that's a quick trip to ITU with COVID. So again, they are displaying a lot of symptoms that are requiring a lot of rehabilitation. So gently with them, light treatments to start with, and building up to allow their bodies to respond. Now, when you look at psychology, and we'll tape it nice and simple, and we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and Maslow was a psychologist in the 1940s, but his work still stands the test of time. And he said that if we have all of these things going up in this order, then we will do well as human beings. But if we haven't if we're not safe, if we haven't got food, drink, water, then we can't begin to think about all these other things up here. And if you think about this, all of these have been affected by living in the middle of the pandemic. We've had food shortages and shelves in the shops being empty. We've had scarcity. Some people, because of financial challenges and losing their jobs, have actually lost their homes. We've all had a sense of fear, loss of freedom, etc. The love and intimacy, we haven't been connecting with our friends and families in the same way that we would do. Our coping mechanisms for dealing with stress and complicated lives have been removed, in terms of the support from friends, going to the gym, etc., etc. We haven't had any of that. So that will have affected people's sense of identity, their self-esteem and their self-worth. And whilst many people said that they were going to learn a new language and learn to cross stitch and do 1,000 other things during the various lockdowns, many people never actually got to do it, because actually we didn't necessarily have the capacity to. So that just gives us a little idea and the reasons why we've all felt so discombobulated. So as we go forward, what's really important? What's really important is that we look after ourselves as well as look after our clients. Now, in the various holistic therapy groups that I'm in and reflexology groups that I'm in, since we've had the go ahead to go back to work, I'm picking up the threads that a lot of people are feeling quite anxious, quite discombobulated, etc. And then there's also the fact that the government has said that we can do these lateral flow tests if we want, and that they're giving them away for free. There's one really good source of information that I go to time and time again, who has steered me well in the last year, and that is the lovely Professor Tim Spector and his Zoe app. And his take on the testing is that testing is all well and fine, but they're not as reliable as we would like them to be, and that actually the most important thing is the symptoms. And there are over 20 symptoms that are predictive of COVID now. And I've put the link on here, and I will put these slides into the Norwich FHT group. If you're not in that group because you've come here from another group, then please put your email address into the chat box, and I will make sure that we email these slides to you so that you've got them and you can click on that link. So our risk assessments that we do before we see our clients is far more important than getting them to do a lateral flow test or doing a lateral flow test ourselves. That's just a belt and braces approach, is the flow test, but remember, they're not that reliable. They give a lot of false positives and a lot of false negatives, so take them with a pinch of salt. So other tips: be informed and be a reliable signpost for your clients. So have your key pieces of information and places to signpost them to. Where I live in West Sussex, our local council is actually, and our county council is actually very good at providing weekly updates on what our hospital admission rates are and what our rates are. So my two primary sources of information are Tim Spector and the COVID app, and I do report every day on my symptoms and have done for a long time now. And then he does an update each week, and they also provide graphs and things, but your local data is actually what's most important to you. Your local rate is key. Next, keep calm. All right, our clients, there will be a rush and people will really want their treatments, and we may feel overwhelmed, but the most important thing to remember is actually they've all coped for the last 3 or 4 months, and we need to make sure we pace ourselves. You need to be resilient, okay? So don't be afraid to say no and book them in at a time that works for you. All right, don't feel that we've got to squeeze everybody in the first 2 weeks. Okay, pace yourself and maintain a positive mindset. Individual risk and community risk, that's our risk assessments and knowing our local information. Look after yourself, ground yourself before you see your clients, ground yourself in between clients. So after you've finished your cleaning, take a moment for yourself. Settle yourself down, do some breathing, anything that gets you lovely and calm and into a good space. All right. So managing your emotions and your responses is really, really important. Build your resilience. And of course, I'm going to give you some information now on how you can do that. So, what do you understand about the term resilience? So, if you're happy to, type into the chat box and just let me know what the term resilience means to you. And I'll give you another minute or so if anybody wants to type in what resilience means to them. And if nobody wants to type, then I will tell you. Okay, so somebody has, yeah, overcoming things, bouncing back, coping and dealing with different situations. Yep. Skills learned to cope. Yes. So there's some really key words there that people have been putting in. And coping, bouncing back, dealing with adversity, dealing with difficult situations. So the definition of resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. Yeah. Now, the good news is that resilience is not a personality trait. It is not something that you are born with. All right. It is something that you acquire through a combination of behaviors, thoughts, and actions. All behaviors, all thoughts, and all actions can be developed, learnt, and changed. Okay, so resilience is something that all of us can develop. And it's actually a little bit like a muscle in that we do need to keep working on it. Even if we have overcome adversity in the past, our resilience can dip if we don't understand our strengths and our areas of weakness. Now, it's been the focus of a lot of psychological studies, but the forefathers, or foremothers, I should say, are two ladies called Emmy Werner and Ruth Smith. And in 1955, they started what's called a longitudinal study that centered on children born in one of the Hawaiian Islands in 1955, and they followed them for 40 years, publishing their findings at various points along the way. And this book is when they got to the point where they were publishing the 40-year mark. Now, what they saw was that the lives of these children saw them struggling with poverty, parental difficulties, illness, and lots of other different issues, such as the islands that were involved went through some severe economic depression. They were devastated by hurricanes a couple of times. There were changes in the way that people worked, in that the plantations that had provided the economy beforehand, they changed and the plantations closed, and there was mass development as tourism became the biggest economic growth factor. There were also changes in how divorce laws worked, which meant that children's access to parents, etc., changed, and there was changes in schooling as well. So these children between 1955 and 1995 went through a lot of, huge changes. And what they found was that there were a lot of these children went to do really well in life despite this adversity that had been thrown at them time and time again. So Werner and Smith said, what is it that is giving these children this ability to be resilient? And they found that there were a number of protective factors. The first is a problem-solving ability. The second is the ability to crack on and accomplish tasks on your own. they found that emotional support from outside the immediate family was really important. The belief that you impact your own destiny, what psychologists call your internal locus of control, is also really, really important. And then the ability to get on well with people. So to sum it up in one sort of catchphrase, they said that a resilient person loves well by having caring relationships in their lives, works well by being successful in their job, plays well by having happy hobbies and enjoys leisure time, and expects a positive future for themselves. So what I did when I wrote my book was I looked at that research, and I looked at a lot of other research, and I looked at the work that I'd been doing in coaching and in the energy modalities. And I also looked at my own journey with resilience, and I built this little model of resilience, which is like a trampoline. So imagine if you jumped on a trampoline, and you'll know that if it's a really nice, tight trampoline bed, you can bounce really high and you can be really strong and secure when you're bouncing. So my model has these little 6 people holding that trampoline bed taut, and each of those people, those springs, is one of the principles. The first one is our belief system, what we believe about change, what we believe about ourselves, and most importantly at the moment, what we believe about the pandemic and what is happening. Because your beliefs shape your reality. Next is optimism and goal setting. So with optimism, what we're talking about here is having that positive outlook for ourselves and being focused and motivated and using goals to move forward so that we maintain that level of optimism. And by optimism, I'm not talking about being like falsely positive and pretending everything is fine when all around us it's absolute chaos. It's about seeing the chaos, understanding the chaos, but then looking for the learning and looking for the chinks of light and the little slithers of positivity, and then building on them. Next is who we're choosing to be. In any situation, we can either be a proactive, problem-solving solution finder, where we actively impact on our own destiny by taking chances, taking risks, making decisions, or we can be static and frozen and fearful and give all control to others and be a victim of the circumstances that we're in. So who are we choosing to be when we go back to work next week? Are we choosing to be a therapist that understands that there's going to be demands on our time and people are going to want us, but actually we need to pace ourselves because our well-being is as important as our clients? And that if we don't serve ourselves and we don't fill our own cup up first, we will have nothing to serve our clients. So putting some boundaries in place and some times and pacing ourselves is really key. Next, nurturing. We're always telling our clients to nurture themselves, take some time for yourself, but so important for us. Self-compassion is a key aspect of resilience. Okay, so understanding that you are as important as others and being kind to yourself is really key. As human beings, we're connected, we're designed for connection. It's deep in our DNA, it's deep in our brains. There are things called mirror neurons that help us connect to others. And as therapists, we all know the power of touch. So connection is really important. And then enjoying and evolving and growing. So when you look at this, you can see that there's reasons why people have been discombobulated. Yeah, they may feel that they haven't got control. They may have feel very disconnected. Their belief systems may be keeping them trapped in fear and they may be struggling to maintain that optimistic outlook. So how do we know which one of these we need to work on? Very simply, we ask ourselves some questions. This is what I call my checkup from the neck up. It's really simple. Anytime life throws you a curveball, anytime you're feeling discombobulated, you just take a moment and you ask yourself these questions. First of all, what are my beliefs about this situation? And you listen to the words that you use, and you look and you delve into them and think, is this belief empowering me, or is it taking my power away? Is it disempowering me? Is it keeping me stuck? We then look at and ask ourselves, what positive outcome am I looking for? Who am I choosing to be? Am I that solution finder, or am I trapped by fear and I'm static? And if we're trapped by fear and we're static, and this is the spring that's weak, then that's the one we need to work on first, because that's the one that will release us and enable us to act the others. Then how are we going to nurture ourselves during this challenging time? Making sure that we look after ourselves as well as others that we're caring for. Who am I connected to? Who are my radiators? Yeah, who are the people that I know will help me emotionally and energetically through this difficult time? And then also, who are my drains energetically and emotionally? And knowing that it is okay to say no to our drains when we are facing a challenge, yeah, because we've only got so much energy and we need to use it wisely. And then as we're going through our challenging time, it's about every day finding those little moments of gratitude, finding the positives and celebrating each little win, and knowing that you deserve each little win. Now, all of that is summed up in my little free book, which I will, at the end, I'll put the link in the chat, but I'll also email you the link when I email you the PowerPoint. That's actually easier. So yeah. And then the work that I've been doing with therapists is since so I used to work for the Association of Reflexologists, but last June they decided that because they'd lost membership and they were couldn't keep employing all the people, they made a number of us redundant. So my role at the AOR was made redundant, and so I decided that that was the optimum time to get my bounce back and to get helping other therapists, because if I was going through a challenging time, there would be other therapists who would be in similar situations. So I launched my Resilient Reflexologist course, and this is some feedback that one of the delegates gave me. So how do you create resilience? Right. First of all, your belief system is really, really key. It's on that trampoline. So we need to recognize limiting beliefs, particularly ones that are causing us stress and anxiety, or are causing us to repeat problems time and time again. So we keep coming back to these things. We need to understand our emotions and know that it's okay to express them. Now, most people, if they're asked, can only list around about 8 emotions. There are over 100 emotions that humans can feel, and most adults are really hard stretched to be able to name them. So when I'm on doing my Resilient course, what I do is I share with you some techniques to be able to tune into yourself emotionally and then move yourself around so that you can acknowledge and understand your emotions. Give yourself permission to look for a positive outcome. Create goals. We use a really cool, very visual goal setting system on the course, which is super, super powerful. And when you've finished with it, you get you can use it as the daily affirmations, which are really, really turbo boost. Look at the language that you use. When we use positive, empowering language, it actually alters our brain chemistry and it makes us more resilient. So then you need to become the hero in your own life story by knowing that your internal locus of control is there. It can be, even if you have previously had a very external locus of control, you can get that to become more internal. Talk to yourself as if you're your own best friend. We all have head chatter. There isn't a human being out there who doesn't have some head chatter going on. But our head chatter is not always particularly nice. And in fact, in most situations, our head chatter is worse than anything we would ever say out loud to anybody in any way, shape, or form. So one of the techniques is to talk to yourself as if you're your own best friend, right? Dial down the negative, critical head chatter and dial up the positive, empowering head chatter, and connect with other people who are going to support and empower you. So what are the benefits of being a resilient therapist? When you know yourself better and you understand yourself better, you will also understand what makes you the therapist that you are. So you recognize your unique strengths and your uniqueness, okay? And in a world where our clients can go to anybody that they want to, because they've got lots of information at their fingertips. Most of them can, people drive miles to see a specific therapist when there may be 40, 50, 60 other equally qualified therapists between their home and the therapist that they've chosen. They choose you because of who you're choosing to be and the rapport and the connection that you have with them. So what we have found from the therapists that have been doing my course is that they become much, much more aware of their uniqueness, and therefore they attract more clients that they want. You will know more about your mind-body connection. You'll know more about how to create powerful goals that help you and your business. Developing your resilience helps you to be able to navigate the emotional roller coaster of life in general, let alone living in the middle of a global pandemic. It helps you be able to find that optimistic outlook, even in the face of adversity. It then allows you to be able to enhance the way you deal and support your clients, because if you are in a better place emotionally and resilience perspective, if you have greater physical, mental, and emotional resilience, you serve your clients better. And as we come out of this pandemic, it will help you to thrive. Now, there are a number of ways that I work with people. First of all, you can take what you learned today and that's enough to get you by. All right. If this is all that you want from today, that's absolutely fine. Not a problem. There is enough there for you to go away, do more reading, to do more understanding. Those who want to learn more can come onto my next bounce course, which is starting in April. I'm also in the middle of writing a book called The Resilient Holistic Therapist. The first quarter has just gone out to my reviewers, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to publish it by the summer/autumn. And then I also work with people one-to-one. So on the course that I do, because obviously I can't, I'd love to be able to give you 6 weeks worth of information in an hour, but even I can't talk that quickly. But and I'll give you these slides so you can read this in your own time. But what we do is we explore each of those principles. I use a mixture of evidence-based science and the therapies, the energy therapies that I've learnt over the years to give you tools to put in your toolkit. So by the end of the course, you've got a whole stack of tools that you can then dip into, so that when you do your checkup from the neck up, if you find that you're week in one of those bounce principles, you can go back to that week, you can revisit it, you can pull out the tools, and you can get yourself back on track. It's proved popular with people from all different walks of life, and everybody takes from it something slightly differently. The next course I'm running on a Saturday morning for those that are interested, and each one's about 75 minutes long. And if anybody who's been on this particular session decides that that's something that they want to do, I've put together a very special bonus for you for that. But as I said, if all you want to do tonight is have listened to this, that's absolutely fine. But if anything, anywhere along the line that I've said tonight has triggered you to go, oh, I want to know a bit more about that, then obviously do have a chat with me, or, you know, have a rummage around. I have got a Facebook page which has got a shed load of information on it, which is called the Resilient Reflexologist. But as I said, this isn't limited to reflexologists. This is for anybody, any therapist, anybody who cares for others. And in fact, anybody in life, really. You know, I just happen to be focusing on therapists. And that's what Kate said when she came on the course. She said that she found that it was not just her reflexology practice that benefited, but also her life in general. And she found that she was helping her teenage boys and her husband with what she'd learned. So it goes way, way beyond just us. So when we change and we power ourselves up and we build ourselves up, then we build up the people that we love and care for around us as well. So this is all in the PowerPoint, and let's have a quick recap. So resilience is the capacity to recover quickly. We know we've got resilience when we have got connection and support, when our belief system empowers us to be our best self, when we have that optimistic outlook where we've got a good internal locus of control and we can use our problem-solving abilities and the fact that we impact on our own destiny and that belief to move us forward. When our clients come through the doors next week, they will be wanting to offload. They will be wanting to share how they have been feeling, and you as therapists must look after yourself, and pacing yourself will be key. I know we're all strapped for cash because none of us have worked for so many months, but pace yourself, pace yourself, pace yourself, because your clients really need you now more than ever before. I truly believe that complementary therapies are going to come into their own. I truly believe that more and more people are going to want to start to take more responsibility for their health and their well-being, because for the first time ever, they will have realized just how important it is. And remember, each of you has got extraordinary strengths, extraordinary courage, and extraordinary stamina, even if you don't see it for yourself. But by building your resilience, you develop your own personal superpower that will help you beyond this discombobulated time. And I'll leave my contact details up here for you. And as I said, I will put a copy of this PowerPoint in the FHT group, and I will also download the chat, and I will send it to everybody who has put, there you go, I've saved the chat. So everybody who put their email address in who isn't in the FHT group, the Norwich one, I'll ping it to you first thing tomorrow morning. So now we can have questions. If anybody wants questions, I'll stop the screen share. And yeah, fire away, folks. I'm here to answer anything. Give me any feedback as well. Feedback's always welcome. Remember, feedback is good. And you can unmute yourself. If you want to talk, you can unmute yourself and talk. But if you want to stay shy and type in the chat box, then do that.
Wow, I think you must have covered everything, but they don't need to ask you anything.
Oh dear, I've stunned everybody into silence.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. Was it helpful? What was your key learning from this evening? And again, if you want to share, then do. By all means, just type it in the chat box. Or if you want to unmute yourself and say, then just put one thing that you took away from the session.
I would just say that for me, it's about confirming that you mustn't go at it all guns blazing. You need to take it slowly, because it's going to be exhausting for us if we just jump in like we were before. So that's just giving you the kick up the bum, if you like, to be able to go away and do that.
Yeah, we must give ourselves permission. We really must give ourselves permission to pace ourselves and look after ourselves, you know, and if that means that we need some help and support in putting in boundaries, because often the reason that we overextend ourselves and we do more than we should do is because our boundaries aren't as strong as they need to be to protect us. And so sometimes that's a belief that we need to just unpick a little bit and flip into an empowering belief, so that you can feel okay to say, you know, no. Because remember, nobody can see your diary but you. So, you know, even if you use an electronic diary booking system, take some slots out so there isn't so much availability. Put in rest time for yourself, particularly when we're doing more cleaning between clients than what we used to do. I think that's really key, because cleaning's knackering.
Oh, can I just mention something?
Yeah.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much. That was so interesting. And also, to me, it sort of confirmed that, you know, we all have incredible possibilities that we don't tap in, or sometimes we have this, you know, imposter syndrome, because we are bombarded by other people who are, or perhaps we think we are not good enough, but really we can all do such a great job. And sometimes we put ourselves down when we don't need to, because it's there, it's, you know, somewhere, perhaps hidden somewhere away, but we just need to tap into all this, because we have all the possibility of achieving great things in life.
Absolutely. And when we are in a good, you're so right, Cecile, because actually when we're in a good place, then we serve our clients better. And there are clients out there for all of us, and people that all of us can help, you know. And it is a ripple. It's a ripple effect. And I think we've got so many amazing therapists who, at the center of them is kindness and compassion to others, that we have a huge possibility here for really spreading the positive love and energy out there. So we need to, that imposter syndrome that sometimes when we, you know, worried about getting clients and, you know, etc., or the competition that's out there. One of the ways I changed the belief around competitions was in the AOR, and I'm sure it's on the FHT one as well, is, you know, obviously you can search for therapists that are local to you if you're looking for a therapy. And when I was not long qualified, I put into the AOR search my postcode and found that there were around 20 reflexologists within 5 miles of my house. And I freaked, and I was like, oh my God, I'll never get any clients because there was loads of them out there. When I did it again last year, so what, 14 years on, there are over 60 within 10 miles of my house. But I still get clients because on my website, I tell my story. So people come to me that need me, and they'll go to other therapists that need them. Yeah. So there's no such thing as competition. What there is your rapport with your clients. And when you realize that, you can really dial down on that worry about imposter syndrome and competitiveness.
Fabulous.
That makes sense.
Fabulous. Well, I think that's a good place to finish now on that really positive note. And thank you very much, Helen. I think we could give her a clap if we, even if let's. Yeah.
So I've got you all thinking. That's my main thing.
Yeah,
If you've
got
got
'em
one
thinking.
positive to take away and something to think about, my job is done.
Yeah, fantastic. And so that they can go start anew next week, and with some ideas that you've given them, and some confidence as well, because that's what we all need at the moment, is some confidence. And I think it sounds like you've done that. So thank you all for coming, ladies. Lovely to see you, and good luck next week. And may all your clients come back, and all new ones as well. They won't all come back, but new ones will take their place. And yeah, this has been good. It's been very, very good, and so timely. I can't believe it. Thanks very much, Helen.
It's a pleasure. All right, then I'll pop the bit